जय सचिदानंद गौर हरि।
गौर प्रेमानंदे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे राम हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे राम Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Bol.
Hare Bol.
So welcome to today's program. Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
So welcome all to today's special God Purnima program, and we will start with a beautiful skit. I think it is about the pastime that Lord Gauranga and Nitai they had with Gauridas Pandit. So we will see this pastime soon, and then we will proceed with. Today we will have we are visiting His Grace Anuttama Das Prabhuji is visiting us. I will introduce him once he arrives. He should be here shortly, and we will continue with the katha and the rest of the program. So a few kids have to go for something else. So we'll quickly start the skit and then move forward. Okay, kids ready?
Everybody's looking at me then. Sorry for that. Reboot. Well, you all can chant Hare Krishna. So, taking issues. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna. So today we are performing a play which is named Gauridas Pandit. So this story is about Gauridas Pandit. Gauridas Pandit is one of the most important sub-branches of the Nityanand branch of the Chaitanya tree of Bhakti. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sri Kaviraj Goswami said, Gauridas Pandit is the emblem of the most elevated devotional service in love of Godhead, had the greatest potency to receive and deliver such love. Making Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda the lords of his life, Gauridas Pandit sacrificed everything for the service of Lord Nityananda. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in 24th year of his Leela, took following decisions.
I came in this world to spread the message of Krishna consciousness, but no one is listening to me. There's only a few devotees here in Navadip who want to talk about the rest of the world. So I've decided to give up my Girahastra ashram and take sannyas.
In this way, Lord Chaitanya has decided to take sannyas, that is renunciation. Before leaving for Vrindavan, Sri Lordships visited all of his dear devotees. So they reached Ambika Kalana to meet their beloved devotee, Gauridas Pandit.
My dear Gaurachandra, my dear Nityananda, what brings you here to Ambika Kalana?
The whole world is suffering from material bondage, and the only cure is to chant the holy no one is listening to me. So I've decided to go to Vrindavan and take sannyas.
What? My lord wants to go to Vrindavan and take sannyas? No, 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 you cannot go, my lord. I will surely die without you. You are the savior of the fallen. Please, Lord, you cannot go. No, no, no.
Let me fulfill your desire in this way. We will manifest ourselves into these deity forms. You can serve them.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Gaura Sundar ki
Shri Nityananda.
But Gauridas, your wish is fulfilled. These two will stay with you and you can serve them eternally.
You must go now.
No, no, my lord, you cannot go.
But dear Gauridas, we have manifested ourselves into these deity forms so you can serve them.
My lord, if your deities are not different than you, then why don't they go? Why don't you stay?
If you wish, Gauridas.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead is captured by the love of his devotees. They cannot say no. So Lord Nityananda and Chaitanya raised their arms and become deities, and deities raised their arms and started walking.
Yeah.
No, no, my lord, you cannot go either.
Gauridas, we're not different from your deities, so why don't you worship them?
If your deities are not different from you, then why don't they go? You stay.
If you desire so, Gauridas, we will do so.
Haribo.
Yeah. Haribo.
Gauridas, we must go.
No, no, my lord, you cannot go either.
This was continued for a while. The Supreme Lord is not different from his deity form. Blinded by the love of Godhead, Gauridas took a while to understand this, and finally Gauridas surrendered to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
My lord, I'm so foolish to not understand that you're completely independent, and that if you have to leave for Vrindavan and take sannyas, then who am I to stop you? I will eternally serve these wonderful deity forms of you, and I will worship them forever. Thank you, my lord, for your mercy. Thank you.
Haribo. Gauradas Pandit Pranadandita Gaura Sundar ki.
So in this way, Lord was worshipped by Gauridas with so much of love and devotion. Gauridas has many disciples. This was many years after the Lord had disappeared from this world. Gaur Purnima, the divine appearance day of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was fast approaching. One day, Gauridas Pandit called his disciple Hridyananda.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev.
Hare Krishna, Hridayananda. My dear Hridayananda, I'm so pleased with your devotional services. I want to tell you something. This year, I want to celebrate Gaur Purnima in a very elaborate way. I want to call all the devotees from all distant places to celebrate this festival. But I must tell you something. I have to go out of town for some important work. Please do not make any preparations while I'm gone, and please take really good care of my lordships.
Okay, Gurudev, as you desire so.
Saying this, Gauridas Pandit left the Ambika Kalana for important work. Gradually, the appearance day of Mahaprabhu was fast approaching. When there were only 3 days left, Gauridas had not returned home yet.
Gurudev, I am confused. You have told me not to make any preparations for the Gaur Purnima festival, but it's fastly approaching. There are only 3 days left. If I do not send out the invitations now, the devotees from distant places will not reach in time. Gurudev, with a prayerful heart, I must send out the invitations and disobey your orders. I am sorry.
Just after that, Gauridas returned.
Yeah.
Who is making all these preparations?
Gurudev, I have to send out the invitations to the devotees. If I do not send them out now, they would not have reached in time.
This is not acceptable. There is no scope of spiritual advancement for anyone who displeases their spiritual master. I order you to leave this room right now.
Hearing this, Hridyananda offered his obeisances and went to sit underneath a tree on the bank of the Ganga. Shortly thereafter, a rich man passing by a boat hailed Hridyananda, wishing to make a donation.
Hare Krishna, are you a disciple of Gauridas Pandit?
Yes, I am.
I wanted to give this Lakshmi to Gauridas Pandit. Can you pass it on?
Yes, thank you so much.
Haribo.
Vidyananda got excited and ran away to Gurudev.
Gurudev, look what I brought you.
My dear Hridayananda, I'm so pleased to see you. What is this you brought me?
I brought this Lakshmi for the Gaur Purnima preparations.
This is amazing. We can use this for the service of the Lord. Please take this Lakshmi immediately and make preparations.
Yes, Gurudev.
As per the order of his Guru, Vidyananda began to make the necessary preparations. Devotees and Vidyananda chanted and danced. Gauranga Nityananda! Gauranga
Nityananda! 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 Nityananda.
The Sankirtan was so blissful and attractive that their lordships themselves, Shri Gaura Nitya, came to take part in dancing and singing.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Gauridas was also holding a festival in his house. When the time came for making an offering, the pujari Gauridas Pandit entered the deity room.
Where's the Lord? Gurudev! ISKCON has asked what's wrong. The Lord is missing! What? The Lord is missing? We must look for him everywhere!
Gauranga
Nityananda! 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 Nityananda!
He's gonna leave me! I must chastise him!
Gauridas saw the two transcendental brothers engaged in ecstatic dancing. Shri Gaura Nityananda also saw Gauridas approaching in an angry mood with a stick in his hand, and they started running and running and running, and they quickly entered the heart of Vidyananda.
Jai Jai Nityananda! 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 Nityananda!
Gauridas ran towards Vidyananda with his arms outstretched, firmly embracing him. You are
so fortunate here, Dayananda. The Lord has taken shelter inside of your heart. From today onwards, your name will be Hridaya Chaitanya.
The glories of Hridaya Chaitanya and Gauridas was spread all over the world, and the dearmost devotees in Ambika Kalina. Gauridas worshipped their lordship and celebrated Gaur Purnima in a wonderful way. Shri Gaur Purnima Mahotsav ki Thank you so much. Thank you. Let's do 3 big Haribol for these little kids.
Gauranga Nityananda! 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 Nityananda! Haribol!
Hare Krishna. Now Saira, Amandeep Prabhu's daughter, she will sing the kirtan, right? Bhajan? Haribol. Haribol. And after that, Ishika and Puru will sing bhajan. Kirtan what? Bhajan. Bhajan. Haribol. जय हो।
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare जय जय दीदी के पीछे बैठ जा बोलना जय जय कृष्ण सचिरनना त्रिभुवर गोरे जन सगन बंदा
Hari Bol. Jai.
Running commentary. It's okay. Bhakti commentary.
Okay, so I think Prabhuji is running a little late. He's still on the way. I think Sati is here. And she will do a little more kirtan. And hopefully Prabhuji will finish here. So, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome, Sati.
She doesn't need mic. वो माइक भी नहीं चाहिए उसको. नहीं इसको अच्छा पॉप लाइट चलो.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Haribol. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Ram. Hare Ram. Ram Ram. Hare Hare. So welcome again. Lot of devotees joined little later. So welcome all of you again to today's special God Purnima program. We are very fortunate today. We have His Grace Anuttama Das Prabhuji with us. And it makes more special because today is a special program. Okay. Actually, when we met with Prabhuji a few months back, we requested him whenever he's in the area, he can grace us with his presence. And he was here, so wonderful. Prabhuji. Thank you so much. I will try to give little introduction of Prabhuji with my limited ability. So actually, Prabhuji is not new to us. If some of you remember, he came to our program 3 years back in April 2015. And actually, he came with Mataji also, his wife, Rukmani Devi Dasi. She's not here today with us. We are missing her, Prabhuji, today. So next time, please make sure she comes with you. And
Thanks
Prabhuji.
for letting me come without.
So Prabhuji was initiated by Srila Prabhupada in 1976 in Vrindavan Dham. Haribol. And I think most of us were just born that time.
Don't offend me.
You got initiated after you were born.
Yes. I was 6 months old.
And Prabhuji is also a very active member of ISKCON GBC, Governing Body Council Commission. And he is also a director of communication for ISKCON. So very, very important position in ISKCON. And he has served as president for many, many temples in the past in US. And he is also a founder of Vaishnav Christian Dialogue that happens in Washington on a regular basis. So Prabhuji, just to let you know about us, we are just a small but a very enthusiastic, sincere group of devotees trying to follow the teachings of Srila Prabhupada. And this is our 6th year of the program. Yeah. And as you know, this program was started by the efforts and inspiration from His Grace Nada Prabhu 6 years back. So we are trying to continue with the program. And we meet every Friday evening, and we discuss Bhagavad Gita, we chanting, and we do Sankirtan. And of course, we do all the special programs, all the in our tradition. And every year we also do a big Janmashtami, Radhashtami festival. All the devotees, they get together and we kind of community reach out program in the community here. So today, of course, we are celebrating God Purnima. So thank you so much for being here in this special occasion for us. Hari, I will let you say.
Just chant for a couple of minutes more before I speak a little bit. Should we just chant a couple more minutes before we start? Sorry. This request? Why not? Okay. I was going to do something else, but we'll do it. Oh. I'm sorry. Pravrajacharya Astotara Shri Srimad Divine Grace HG Bhakti Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Pravrajacharya Astotara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Jai. Ananta Goti Vaishnavadinda ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Brahmachari Haridas Tagore ki Jai. Prem Ji Gaura Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamukunda Radha Kundi Giri Govardhan ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham ki Jai. Mayapur Navadvipam ki Jai. Gangamai ki Jai. Yamunamai ki Jai. Tulsi Devi ki Jai. Bhakti Devi ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Devi ki Jai. Purnima Festival ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki Jai. Vaishnav Sangha ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, Shri Shri Guru Gauranga. So we have two special guests here tonight. And I'm so terrible with names that I already forgot their names. But we want to officially welcome you. We have a graduate student here who's a teacher and also doing her graduate degree. And as part of it, they're doing research in cultures. So they said, okay, well, is there a place in the local area where people meet in a basement and sit on the floor? That would be good. So they went if I understand properly, they went online and looked up sitting on the floor in a basement and read it. And this showed up, so they're here. So we're very grateful that you're here. Tell us your names again, I'm sorry.
I'm Kristen, and this is my husband, Brandon.
Kristen and Brandon, very good. So glad you both here.
Haribo!
And Brandon's here not just to accompany her, but he's also thrown himself into the cultural experience, so much so that he refused a chair for the first 10 to 20 minutes. He finally prevailed upon him and said, look, I'm also 6'2", and I don't like sitting on the floor very long either. So with that, he was gracious enough to accept the chair, so we're glad you're here. And if they didn't tell you, there's dinner at the end. And you don't have to join or anything, you just have to stay till then. There's nothing else required.
And it's free.
So yeah, it's free. It's free. And he's in charge, so if anybody tries to charge you any money, don't believe them. This is his house. He says it's free, it's free. Okay? And don't believe the guy in the parking asking for money for parking. Okay. So I was going to read a little bit from, there's a beautiful chapter called Divinity and Divine Service in the very first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So read a little bit of the, there's a long purport, I'll read the text and then a couple paragraphs and share some comments, and then hopefully we can open up for some conversation, some discussion. So famous text again 1, 2, 28, 29. So I think I'll just say it once and you can, actually it's easy, let's repeat it. Vasudeva Paraveda,
Vasudeva Paraveda,
Vasudeva Paramaka,
Vasudeva Paramaka,
Vasudeva Parayoga,
Vasudeva Parayoga,
Vasudeva Parakriyaha,
Vasudeva Parakriyaha,
Vasudeva Param Jnanam,
Vasudeva Param Jnanam,
Vasudeva Param Tapaha,
Vasudeva Param Tapaha,
Vasudeva Paro Dharmo,
Vasudeva Paro Dharmo,
Vasudeva Paragati,
Vasudeva Paragati.
Anybody else want to chant? All these smartphones are out here. Make anybody smart.
Vasudeva Paraveda,
Vasudeva Paraveda,
Vasudeva Paramaka,
Vasudeva Paramaka,
Vasudeva Parayoga,
Vasudeva Parayoga,
Vasudeva Parakriya,
Vasudeva Parakriya,
Vasudeva Param Jnanam,
Vasudeva Param Jnanam,
Vasudeva Param Tapa,
Vasudeva Param Tapa,
Vasudeva Paro Dharmo,
Vasudeva Paro Dharmo,
Vasudeva Paragati,
Vasudeva Paragati. Vasudeva Paraveda.
Vasudeva Paraveda.
Vasudeva Paramakha.
Vasudeva Paramaka.
Vasudeva Parayoga.
Vasudeva Parayoga.
Vasudeva Parakriya.
Vasudeva Parakriya.
Vasudeva Param Jnanam.
Vasudeva Param Jnanam.
Vasudeva Param Tapa.
Vasudeva Param Tapa.
Vasudeva Parodharma.
Vasudeva Parodharma.
Vasudeva Paragati.
Vasudeva Paragati.
Any of the ladies have a smartphone? Well, only the men because they need the help. One of the ladies?
Vasudeva. I'm trying to get the rest out. Give me 1 minute. It's okay. Let her go. Totally.
Vasudeva Paraveda.
Vasudeva Paramakha.
Vasudeva Paramaka.
Vasudeva Parayoga.
Vasudeva Parayoga.
Vasudeva Parakriya.
Vasudeva Parakriya.
Vasudeva Param Jnanam.
Vasudeva Param Jnanam.
Vasudeva Param Tapah.
Vasudeva Param Tapah.
Vasudeva Parodharma.
Vasudeva Parodharma.
Vasudeva Paragati.
Vasudeva Paragati.
Vasudeva. Should I go on or no? Sure. Vasudeva Paraveda.
Vasudeva Paraveda.
Vasudeva Paramaka.
Vasudeva Paramaka.
Vasudeva Parayoga.
Vasudeva Parayoga.
Vasudeva Parakriya.
Vasudeva Parakriya.
Vasudeva Param Jnanam.
Vasudeva Param Jnanam.
Vasudeva Paratapaha.
Vasudeva Paratapaha.
Vasudeva Parodharma.
Vasudeva Parodharma.
Vasudeva Paragati.
Vasudeva Paragati.
Translation. In the revealed scriptures, the ultimate object of knowledge is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The purpose of performing sacrifice is to please him. Yoga is for realizing him. All fruitive activities are ultimately rewarded by him only. He is supreme knowledge, and all severe austerities are performed to know him. Religion, dharma, is rendering loving service unto him. He is the supreme goal of life. So maybe you can repeat together. In the revealed scriptures, the ultimate object of knowledge, Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The purpose of performing sacrifice is to please him. Yoga is for realizing him. All fruitive activities are ultimately rewarded by him only. He is supreme knowledge. And all severe austerities are performed to know him. Religion, dharma, is rendering loving service unto him. He is the supreme goal of life. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. That Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, is the only object of worship is confirmed in these two shlokas, or verses. In the Vedic literature, there is the same objective, establishing one's relationship and ultimately reviving our lost loving service unto him. That is the sum and substance of the Vedas. The Bhagavad Gita, the same theory is confirmed by the Lord in his own words. The ultimate purpose of the Vedas is to know him only. All the revealed scriptures are prepared by the Lord through his incarnation in the body of Srila Vyasadeva, just to remind the fallen souls, conditioned by material nature, of Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. No demigod can award freedom from material bondage. That is the verdict of all Vedic literatures. And moving towards the end of the purport. Vasudeva is the original personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. As explained before, the original personality of Godhead expands himself by innumerable forms. Such expansion of forms is made possible by his various energies. His energies are also multifarious, and his internal energies are superior, and external energies inferior in quality. This is also explained in Bhagavad Gita as the para and apakara prakriti, apara prakritis. Therefore, all culture of knowledge, austerities, sacrifice, and activities should be aimed at changing the quality of the influence that is acting upon us. For the present, we are all being controlled by the external energy of the Lord. And just to change the quality of the influence, we must endeavor to cultivate spiritual energy. In the Bhagavad Gita it is said that those who are Mahatmas, or those whose minds have been so broadened as to be engaged in the service of Lord Krishna, are under the influence of the internal potency of the Lord. And the effect is that such broad-minded living beings are constantly engaged in the service of the Lord without deviation. That should be the aim of life, and that is the verdict of all the Vedic literatures. No one should bother himself with fruitive activities or dry speculation about transcendental knowledge. Everyone should at once engage themselves in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. Nor should one worship the different devas or demigods who work as different hands of the Lord for creation, maintenance, or destruction of the material world. There are innumerable powerful demigods who look over the external management of the material world. They are all different assisting hands of Lord Vasudeva. Even Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are included in the list of demigods, but Lord Vishnu or Vasudeva is always transcendentally situated. Even though he accepts the quality of goodness in the material world, he is still transcendental to all material modes. The following example would clear the matter more explicitly. In the prison house, there are prisoners and the managers of the prison house. Both the managers and the prisoners are bound by the laws of the king. But even though the king sometimes comes in the prison, he is not bound by the laws of the prison house. The king is therefore always transcendental to the laws of the prison house, as the Lord is always transcendental to the laws of the material world. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sahitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamiyam Tadata Swapanamtikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So it's nice to be back in Ready. And some of you have seen the last couple of days I've been in town for a few days, so it's inspiring to know that I've been in town for 3 days, and some of you're still coming, knowing that I'm speaking again. So that in itself is reassuring. So thank you for your kind presence. It either means you wanted to come and hear me speak again, and you know that the cooks here are even better than the ones over there. Maybe both. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's nice to be with everybody. So just some thoughts on this verse. I read one of these verses in the same chapter last night, I think, and there was described how there's this assembly of great sages or spiritual persons, great yogis and mystics, people that have made the center point of their life spiritual awakening. And they're concerned about, this is said to have happened thousands of years ago, and they have some ability to see into the future. So they're concerned about what's coming up, which is kind of the present. They're seeing the present time that we're living in. And because of that, they've gone to this holy place called Naimisharanya Forest, and they've decided they want to dedicate themselves to whatever activity they can do that will help kind of purify the world and counteract all the negative things that are happening, draw people's attention to some higher purpose. And they're particularly asking one of the leaders there, one of the most spiritually qualified people, his name was Sutta Goswami, they explained to him in an earlier verse, you know the purpose of all the different spiritual teachings. You're greatly learned. You've heard from your teachers. You're a realized personality. You know what the ultimate benefit is of human life. You know all that there's so many books of knowledge. Please tell us what's the essence of those. And just like we can see sometimes, maybe you walk in a library and there's tens of thousands of volumes of books, and if you stop and think, it'd be nice to know what these all say, but I'll need 10 lifetimes just to read. The Reading Public Library is more than lifetime. What to speak of today, you get out your Kindle or whatever, and there's thousands of more books that can fit on the bookshelf. So they're therefore asking, and please help us through this kind of maze and of different ideas and trying to understand some higher purpose. And people today, we kind of live in our own similar maze, but we don't so much find, a little bit, but generally you don't find a whole lot of people saying, well, let's go to the forest and sit down and try to understand what's the highest spiritual benefit for people. These days the kind of like current kind of reflection of that tendency would be, let's all go to the mall and see what's on sale. Let's all congregate in some big place and decide what's the best thing available for us. Somebody's going to say, well, hey, whatever, Macy's got 30% off. And somebody else is going to say, well, no, they've got the cutest little sweaters over there for half price. And everybody gets excited. Okay, wow, this is good for us. But, according to the Bhagavatam, the book we're reading, that this point is being made here that all the different activities of the world that are going on, so many people, just like Kristen's a teacher, so many people here have advanced degrees, spent a lot of time in schools and universities, and some master's degrees and some PhDs and all that. We all spent years in different levels of public school, developing knowledge about different topics. So here Sutta Goswami's pointed out to these sages that the ultimate purposes of all knowledge is to understand Sri Krishna, or to understand the personality, the divinity behind everything that we see. So in a sense, he's kind of, with one stroke, washing away a lot of what he's claiming are the misperceptions of life. Because, most of us, we think, well, the purpose of knowledge is to make money so I can go to the mall and buy the things I want. Or the purpose of knowledge is so I can get a good job and I can have a secure future. Or the purpose of knowledge is I want to become a researcher so I can understand how to solve, can become a medical researcher. Sometimes people, they dedicate their whole lives, and I'm like, my brother-in-law is a medical researcher, doctor on children's diseases, and his wife works on AIDS research and like that. So they're understanding knowledge to help improve the human condition here, and so many different ideas about how what's the purpose of knowledge. But here Sutta Goswami is saying, no, the purpose of knowledge isn't to understand any aspect of the world that we live in. Real knowledge means how to transcend it. So that's a concept that generally people aren't so much interested in. I personally, I was mentioning last night, I've had experience when I was first a Christian devotee living in Colorado, and sometimes we would go out and try to share some of this literature with different people, go on campuses or whatever. And sometimes you meet people that are very interested. Oh, these are ancient books of wisdom, and that in itself is, wow, an ancient wisdom tradition is something special, and they would kind of revere it and very anxious to have it. And other people would have a very different reaction. A lot of people just kind of like, I have no interest in that. And then occasionally you'd come in contact with someone who would just go, whoa, no. And you had this kind of subtle sense they were saying that maybe even they weren't conscious of it. Just, I know it's in that book. It's going to tell me there's something beyond everything I'm doing. and I don't want to hear about it right now, because my mind's focused on something, and that's what I want to do. So don't get in the way. But here Sutta Goswami is making this point that no, actually, the purpose of all knowledge is ultimately to understand the divinity and what our relationship is. And then he says the purpose of performing sacrifice. Sacrifice isn't a word that's used too much in the modern culture, but actually people are sacrificing all day long. Every day when you get up, just like I was staying with Nitya Gopal Prabhu, and his elder son, it's Achyuta, and what's his other son?
Aditya is the first one.
Aditya's the elder one, right? So, nice young guy, kid, 14 years old. And he's got a routine down. 6:50, the alarm goes off, and he's out the door at 7:10 to make it to the school bus. I saw it with my own eyes. And they just told me, they said, you can do whatever you want, because we were up late for class. They said, you know, you can be in there, because we like shared bathroom, right? So you can be in there till 6:49. You can be there after 7:11, but not in this period of time. And I'm trying to think, was it two? At least one morning, maybe two. And you know, they were like, boy, the clock went off, and he was up before I could blink. He was up, and you know, in the shower and out the door. And I thought, wow. That's a sacrifice for 14 years. That's not an easy thing to do.
Hare Krishna.
And just to like prove how difficult it was, this morning was Saturday. So same thing, and we're up really late last night, so I don't know, went to sleep like 12:30 or whatever. So normally, you all know we try to get up real early, but this was not such an early morning, so I get up and it was like, oh wow, it's you know, I was thinking it's Saturday. What's he going to do? So I kind of like just went and brushed my teeth, whatever, I got out of the way. But, you know, 2 hours later, I could walk by and the door was open. He was just like out cold. Because it's like he gets to really manifest what it means to be a teenager on Saturday or Sunday. I felt much more comfortable with a traditional teenager, you know. He was out cold, 9 o'clock. But Monday through Friday, he's performing sacrifice. He's got to get up, he's got to get on the school bus. I mean, even to the fact, like, this crazy cold weather, he walked out one morning with shorts on. I said, what are you doing? He was performing some other kind of sacrifice. So, you know, and go to school, and when you're an adult, we all know, different kind of sacrifices. I mean, whatever the weather may be, and sometimes we have a boss that we enjoy working with, and sometimes not. Sometimes we're in a working environment we like, sometimes not. Sometimes we're you know, we feel we're getting, you know, good remuneration for our work, sometimes not. It's a sacrifice. But people, they make that sacrifice, and they do so because they want to, you know, maybe have a nice house for themselves, and more often they're thinking, I want to have somebody for my kids, I want to help put them through college, and they sacrifice. It's what adults do. And then, you know, especially in people of culture from South Asia, you got to like work for an extra, you know, 15 years to save money for your kids' weddings and all of that. You know, it's like, that's a sacrifice. I was thinking the traditional English, you all know this, but the traditional English expression, you ask people, how's your kids? Oh, she is settled now. Right? When the daughter's married, and I was thinking, well, she's not settled, but your mind is settled. You're the one that's settled now, because the whole life is like, you know, you get a 3-year-old daughter, you think, like, I've only got like 17 years to make a lot of money, you know, help her get married, and you know, and then I can be peaceful, right? So, you know why? Because we're making sacrifices, and or you know, I mentioned students as a teenager, but also like older students. You know, you go to college, and the students that are a little more serious, well, they're all making sacrifice. Ones that are more serious, they're really sacrificing, and you know, they're working very, very hard, and they're trying to make sure they get really good grades. So they're sacrificing the present. You know, whatever enjoyments or parties or things, they're putting those aside, they're giving those up for some higher purpose. So there's different kind of sacrifices, but here, again, Sutta Goswami is saying that the real purpose of sacrifice Just like you might sacrifice your Friday night party because you want to get a good grade in your test, or you might sacrifice buying a new car because you want to have money for your kid's education, or you might sacrifice the vacation because you want to have a little more money aside for your child's wedding, or to help them with a down payment on their house or whatever. So you're sacrificing for someone or for something. And Sutta Goswami is saying actually that tendency to sacrifice should be for understanding Krishna, for understanding the Supreme. Not exclusively. Not that doesn't mean that, okay, in the process of trying to understand who's God or the divinity, that nothing else matters, but that the ultimate purpose, he makes that point of the ultimate object of knowledge, the ultimate purpose. And also for yoga, it's interesting, yoga has become so popular these days. Very few people ask the question, what's the purpose of this? If you go to yoga studios, just kind of, if you ask somebody, what's the purpose of this? They kind of look at you like, well, you have to have some of the people that are here. And generally, most of the people there, they'll say, well, some will say, well, I want to feel more healthy. I need to stretch. I'm getting older, and things are tightening down. Or I'm not that old, but I still want to be tighter. That's a lot of it. Or there's some sense of, it helps me become more peaceful. Or maybe I'm just exploring something. But again, here, yoga, Sutta Goswami, the Bhagavatam is saying, yoga is also meant for understanding the divinity. And then he's supreme knowledge. All fruitive activities are ultimately rewarded by him. People are working very hard for different kind of gains, but according to the Bhagavatam, he's the one behind the scenes pulling the strings. It's kind of like if you work in a particular office and you're working hard for your boss, then at a certain point in time you realize actually the one making the decisions is this person, not that one. You might change your attention a little bit. You realize, well, this is a person that really has to be pleased. So you're performing some activity, but who's actually going to reward you? Who's actually going to reciprocate with you? So here again, it's been said, all those things in the ultimate sense, they're coming from Krishna in the same way all austerities are performed to know him. And then he makes his ultimate statement, the ultimate statement, religion or spirituality or dharma is rendering loving service unto him. He is the supreme goal in life. So this is the claim that Sutta Goswami is making, and that's why this is argued to be transcendental knowledge, because it's knowledge that transcends the ordinary course of activities. And generally, people are very much busy with what Sutta Goswami would say are the ordinary course of activities, which are based on what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, a false premise, and that's the problem. Just like I was with Anasuya and her husband Parikshit Prabhu, and he among other, he teaches chemistry and math, right?
Just chemistry.
Oh, just chemistry, okay. But he was explaining how sometimes he said he was saying that he's very strict with his students because many of them are going to go into the medical field and doing their chemical analysis in a professional way, dealing with medicines and medications and things like that. And he said sometimes they'll just make a simple error and they'll miscalculate a liter to be a milliliter, etc. And you can imagine if you're supposed to get a milliliter of medicine and the chemist accidentally gives you a liter. Or if you're supposed to get a liter to get better and they only give you a milliliter, it's a pretty serious thing. In fact, it's funny, but on the serious side, the numbers just in the United States are astounding. There's well over 100,000 people a year in America die from medical mistakes. Yeah, there was an article, I live in Washington, D.C., an article in the Washington Post about 6 years ago. At that point, it was 90,000 people die every year from medical mistakes. And now it's way higher than that. And I remember speaking with some doctors that I knew, and they said, oh, that's very conservative. It's definitely, and we all have heard the stories. You meet somebody, I just heard the story Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who sadly passed away in a car accident a few years ago, but previously he had prostate cancer and was having surgery, and he got like the devotees would tell me, arranged the top doctor, I think it was Southern Methodist University, or it was in Texas someplace. And after the operation, he went home and he was having some agonizing pain. And they kind of called the doctor and said, don't worry about it, go away, but it didn't go away. And then they found out that they'd actually left a whole, some metal instrument inside and sew them up with that there. You know, you hear about things like that happen. Sometimes I have known people who had relatives who went in for like a dental surgery and they died because somebody did something wrong. You know, whether something went wrong happened. So mistakes happen in this material world, and we're all subject to making mistakes. And you know, he's teaching the students be very careful. You know, be very attentive to the details. So Sutta Goswami, in a similar way, saying, same way if a chemist gets the basic premise wrong, you just make one little mistake. You know, you did so much hard work. You're trying to take care of the patient, but just one little slip, and you wrote milliliter instead of liter, and everything's wrong. It's a big problem. A lot of people are going to suffer. So Sutta Goswami is making this claim here that for us living in modern society, there's one, you could say, slight miscalculation. And because of that miscalculation, everything else that's done so nicely is wrong. I was in Texas not too long ago, and there was a devotee there in the congregation I was speaking with, and I was asking about what his work was. And his work was, they have a big business because in Texas, the ground is such that it's very sandy. And apparently, they didn't realize that years ago when they built a lot of big buildings, and they're all settling.
Oh.
So his company is to go back and rebuild the foundation under an existing building.
Hare Krishna.
I don't know if you know, they don't have that problem in Pennsylvania. You have a lot of rocks up here, right? So down there in sand. I'd never heard of that before. But so they didn't quite get things right, and because of that, the whole building's going the wrong way. Or they don't get things quite right, and somebody dies from some kind of medical mistake. So the Bhagavatam is making this claim that modern society isn't getting things quite right, that there's one little problem with the basic premise, and therefore everything else, although it's very, very, very elaborate and sophisticated, it's wrong. And what that wrong is, because, as Krishna says in the very first verses of Bhagavad Gita, we, me, I, all of you, we are mistakenly, often, usually, thinking that this body is me. But described as not me. I'm the consciousness of the person inside. Of course, our whole perception is that this is me. If I look around the room, it's really clear that I'm sitting right here because everything goes that way. And you know, when I look in the mirror and I move or I talk, it's obviously it's me. But actually, just simple ways we can understand. If I look in the mirror and say, well, it must be me because it's my mouth. But just by that description, my, I don't say I mouth, right? You don't say, how do you like I shirt? I got a new shirt. I was with from some friends today. Said they gave me shirts. Like, okay, I don't say, well, how do you like I shirt? You say, how do you like my shirt? Isn't it? Nobody says, how do you like I haircut? Right? How do you like my haircut? Is it? How do you like my dress? You don't say I dress, right? You don't even say I hand. Say my hand. My nose. You don't even say I thoughts. You say my thoughts. We all have to experience in a subtle way the difference, because sometimes the thoughts in our mind, we all go, wow, where did that come from? That's not me. What happened? Something happened to me today. Was this? Oh, I know. I was driving on the road. Maybe my mind's just crazier than the rest of yours, but some, you might have. I'm driving the road, and my mind didn't like tell me, but it was like envisioning. It was like a car stopped on the side of the road, and it was like envisioning. Well, like do something different. Like why don't you just like go off the road and run in the back of that car? It was like, whoa, I'm not going to do that. You know, I can foresee the whole thing, and like that's a nasty, nasty thing. Or, you know, unfortunately, we live in a world where people aren't taught to understand the difference between my mind and I mind, and my thoughts and I thoughts, and people kind of generally think I am the body, I am the thoughts. You know, I am angry, and you know, get out of my way. And you know, sometimes like what do they have? The make my day law, right? You know, I got a right on my piece of property. I want to get mad and angry about anybody. If you cross some line, I can, like that. But I am not angry. I'm observing anger. I'm experiencing anger, but I'm not anger. No, that's not me, you know. I'm not jealous. We talk about that sometimes. I'm jealous. My generation, John Lennon had a song, I'm just a jealous guy. You know? No, actually, you're not a jealous guy. You're a guy. You're not even a guy. You're a person. You're a soul who's experiencing jealousy. Or I'm a person who's experiencing desires for certain things, but why am I experiencing desires for those certain things? It's because I'm observing it, because it's the thoughts are there in the mind, the thoughts are there, the desires are there in the body, but I'm the observer. And the Bhagavad Gita gives this beautiful example of a chariot. Most of you have seen the picture. A chariot with 5 horses. And the 5 horses are described as like our senses, the eyes, the nose, the sense of touch, the sense of taste, sense of smell. Those are like the senses. They're the horses. They're pulling the chariot. And then the reins, the ropes that control the horses, are described as the mind. And then there's somebody driving the chariot. That's the intelligence, trying to control the mind and control the horses. And then the driver, Bhagavad Gita, the picture in the Bhakti book trust version, the driver's just kind of like overwhelmed and scared and like, where are we going here? Because the horse is just out of control, the mind's out of control, the driver has no idea what's going on, and we, the soul, are just getting carried away. So, but in modern society, people generally think the more carried away you are, the better. And that's why I probably talked a little bit here about how we're controlled. There's a general sense in modern society that I don't want to be controlled. I want to be independent. And so many different, in modern, last century too, so many different independence movements, black liberation, women's liberation, gay liberation, Russian independence, this independence, that, American independence, etc. So there's a desire to be independent, so many different social movements, political movements, etc. But the Vedas and here in the Bhagavatam is explaining that actually we don't know where real independence lies. We don't understand how subtle the controls are over us. So our endeavors to try to become free, they're not going deep enough. And Prabhupada often would give the example, but he mentioned it here in a different context, like a prison house. If you're a prisoner and you're in some little corner cell and it's dingy and it's dark and it's yucky and the food's not so good, but you think, I got to get free from this cell. So then you figure out some system and you work it really good and you pay off a guard, or you somehow make friends with the warden, and they move you from the dingy, dark basement corner cell upstairs to like a little bigger cell with a little window, you get a little bit of fresh air, and the food's a little better. And you think, wow, use a modern expression, we made it. Isn't it? But according to somebody that has knowledge, they see us and think, wow, you're still in prison. They're like, no, I'm doing great. I'm doing really good. So this is Sutta Goswami's point. He's making a strong statement. The purpose of knowledge is not to get ahead in the material context. The purpose of sacrifice is not to be more comfortable while we're here. The purpose of fruitive activities, etc. The real purpose of these things is to awaken a knowledge of our relationship. Knowledge, first of all, that I'm not this body, but I'm the consciousness within the body. And the knowledge of what's the relationship between the individual soul and the Supreme Soul. And this critique, therefore, is described sometimes that one with spiritual knowledge is described as a sadhu, one who cuts through ignorance, or guru, a spiritual teacher, means one who is heavy with knowledge, because they're making these claims, these statements that the different goals that people have in modern society, they're like the milliliter misinterpreted into the liter. The basic principle is not right. And therefore we see, if we just kind of step back and you know, like walk into a shopping mall one day, and instead of running around looking for the sale, just sit down and watch the people. It's very interesting. Or, you know, just go to work one day and ask one of your colleagues, like in the lunchroom, why is there suffering in the world? And they'll look at you like, what? You know? Or, why do people have to die? What? Are you okay? Then you say, well, no, actually I'm not, because people are dying and there's suffering in the world. I'm not okay. And they say, like, I think you need a day off. You know, are things okay at home? You're not drinking again, are you? Did you take the wrong pill this morning? Like that. So it's a challenge kind of for us, and it's a wake-up call. But when you look around and you see those people in the shopping mall, when you ask people, you know, I remember I was, as a college student, I was starting to read different spiritual texts and go to the Buddhist retreats on the weekends, on Saturday, and let's see, go to Buddhist retreats on Saturday, go to church on Sunday, go to the Hare Krishna temple Sunday afternoon, hang out with what they used to call Jesus freaks in the 70s on campus, and then, you know, go out and party with your friends on the weekend because you're trying to sort it all out. And I had one experience that just, as a student in those days, and everybody, you know, I wasn't raised in a very pious family, so my last job was a bartender. And, but before I had that job, just going to the bar as a patron, party, you know, big parties with lots of friends and rock music and all that. And I remember one Saturday night just kind of thinking about the way the world was working. And I was with a whole group of friends, and I leaned over to one friend, happened to be a young woman, just a friend, a whole gang of us. And I just said to her, I looked at her, I said, isn't life, and I used like a word I won't use here, but I said, isn't life like really bad or terrible or painful or something, different word? Because I was looking around the room and seeing how kind of meaningless this all seemed to be. And I asked her that question, and she just looked at me and started to cry. And then I could tell that actually it's not just me, you know, because you kind of wonder. Because in the beginning it's kind of a spiritual practice. You kind of, it's a natural thing to kind of think, is there something wrong with me? I mean, you know, like the boss just keeps telling me, you know, congratulations, you got a raise, but you realize, well, as soon as you give me a raise, my mind's thinking, yeah, but I need more. Or, you know, as soon as you get the new car, you know, you get the new car and you get the most expensive model you can, but right next to it, there's always a car that's just an extra $5,000, that, you know, an extra couple features that you really couldn't afford, and geez, maybe if I had that one, or I should have got that one, or I wish I'd gotten that one, like that. So, leaned over this woman and she began to cry. And I could just tell, actually, she's also feeling some sense of something lacking, despite all the externals. I had these balloons kind of remind me of it. My wife and I one time, years ago when the economy was really booming, maybe somehow we get on the wrong list, we were getting all these people calling us for timeshares. I don't think they're as popular as they were for a while. I mean, like twice a week we're getting a call for a timeshare. You got to go out and, you know, buy. So one time we said, all right, let's just go and hear the spiel. So I told the person on the phone, I said, okay, we'll go, but you need to know we're the kind of people we never make a quick decision. So we'll go, but there's no way we're buying anything that night. No problem, no problem. Just come anyway. It's okay. It's fine, fine. And then we got there. I went to check in. I said, listen, this one, I want to be open and honest with you. We're not buying anything tonight because I know the way you guys work. Kind of went around with a group. You know, they sit a group like this and they show you a PowerPoint, this beautiful thing, and half of you sign up. That's not the way this worked. I don't know if they all work like that. There was one guy look, I got to tell you, you know, we're not the kind of people that buy. And this is the guy that's about to invest 45 minutes of his time giving you a high-pressure sales pitch. And he looked at me like, and he more or less said, what the heck are you doing here? And I said, well, I called up, and he was like, all right, geez, you know, waste night. So he took us through the whole thing. And we got to the end room. Anybody been to these situations? No. All right, so you know what I'm talking about. Tell me if yours was different. We got to the end. This place had about 100 more balloons than they got here. The last room, and they were playing Beatles music, because I guess the generation of people that had whatever, 50 or a couple $100,000 to blow, were like Beatles music. It was like one of these songs about just, you know, be happy and life's good. And you know, and they tell us that, you know, do you want it tonight? It was like, no. Okay, well, we'll throw in this. No, told you we're not going to decide tonight. No, well, we'll throw in this. It was like, you know, the balloons. And I was watching these people getting, like, nervous. Anybody ever been to Las Vegas? Few of us. You walk in those rooms, there's bells and there's whistles and there's girls that should put more clothes on and, you know, guys showing up with gold watches. And it's Rajagoon. And it's like this sense of excitement, and because it's exciting, you lose sense of yourself. You lose, like, so the same thing with this timeshare. They just put everybody in this room with this loud music, and everybody, and you know, and finally, they finally realized that these people meant it when they said they're not going to buy anything tonight. You know, so they kind of like let us go. And I said, I want to talk to the manager. What for? Nobody ever talks to the manager. So I want to talk to the manager. So I went to the back and I met the manager. Well, you know, you get out of the room with all the bright lights, and then they go back to the real world. They take you down a dingy little hall, and there's like a desk with the guy who's running the whole thing. And I asked him, I said, how do you sleep at night? I said, there's people out here right now that cannot afford what you're selling. And you're not giving people the time to think about what they ought to do or whether they really need your product. And I'm sure it's a great product. A lot of people need vacations and this and that's great. But probably 9 out of 10 people you're signing up absolutely can't afford it. And that's why you put the pressure and the whole subtle thing to manipulate people, because they don't need it. How do you sleep at night? You know, the guy was like, well, you know, really sorry, but, you know, you do get like 3 free nights because you came out. And I told him, I said, I don't want your 3 free nights. I just came in to see you guys do. I said, I think some of the stuff you're selling is reasonably good, but why do you have to pressure people like that? So they create this environment that people can't think, really. And the same way like Las Vegas. I actually went with, some of you may know Gaura, Kirtan leaders, my son. Went with him a few years ago to a yoga retreat in the Bahamas. It was right next to this huge hotel and casino. And they have, I think, like one of the biggest aquariums in the world. So we walked over, went through the aquarium, and just said, well, let's go look at the casino. They had some fantastic, like, art things that some of the people wanted to see. So as we walked into the casino, there's like a narrow hallway about like this, and a huge room, but the hallway about like this. And all up and down the walls, there were like very expensive jewelry. Like maybe $5,000 is the cheapest thing that's there. And you know, diamond watches and the whole thing. And lots of people selling stuff. So you walk through there, and I was thinking like, okay, before you can get in the door, you think like $5,000 is nothing. Before you walk in and start putting your money down on the table. And then you walk in the casino, it's the same thing, the bright lights and the music, and I think, I mean, they had tables where the opening bet was like $1,000. You couldn't even start without putting $1,000 down. And some of the people walked off to kind of go look at these big, beautiful lamps that they had, some artists, I can't remember the name. But I said, I'm going to stay here. So I was standing next to a roulette table, one of the gambling games. And I was watching this one guy, and he was really feeling his stuff, you know. I had the sense he's like a small businessman, he's making a lot of money, you know, came to clean out the house, you know. He's going to show him, you know. And he had like this pile of chips. You know, you turn your money in and you get chips, and I don't know, whatever. This one's worth $20, this one's worth $50, this one. He had this big pile of chips. And he had like his shirt unbuttoned, his, you know, gold chain and hairy chest, and he's just like, you know, macho. So I watched him for a while, he's gambling, and then, you know, I walked away to do something. I came back like 10 minutes later, And the guy looked like a balloon that somebody left the air out of. All his chips were gone. And he had this look on his face like, what happened? You know, what happened? And the whole room's full of people like that. You know, certain percent. I lived in Las Vegas for a while, and they'd have these signs up. So it was like amazing. It's like, are you serious? Like, how foolish can you have a sign up? 97% return on slots. Which means you think, wow, 97%. I mean, you normally, if you put money in the bank, you get like 2%. It's like these guys give 97%. Wow. But what it means is for every $100 you give them, they give you 97 back. Every time you pull the thing, they're taking 3% on average. But there's bells and whistles are going off in the room, and everybody's throwing their quarters in, and then somebody wins like a couple $100, and the bells go off, and you go, whoa, put more money in. You know, and you stand and you watch, and you think, what's going on here? Like with the timeshares, like why all the bells and whistles? Why are you creating this kind of crazy scene? Or you go to shopping malls, it's like, why creating the crazy scenes? I remember years ago, Rena Anamraj gave a class, and he talked about how often you see a billboard advertising bread.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you've ever seen one. I've seen one because I lived in Detroit and it was a bread factory, so they had a couple signs near the factory. But you never see, right? Why don't you see a sign for bread? Because you need it. Isn't it? Why put a sign up? Everybody needs it. So what do they put signs up for?
What you don't need.
All the stuff you don't need.
Yep.
Because then you start thinking, wow, I really need that. And of course the whole psychology is, if I buy that, I'm going to be either as thin as she is, or I'm going to, if you're in a woman's body, or if you're a guy, you're going to think, I'm going to get a girl just like that. You know, it's kind of like you walk in the car deal and go, like, I like the car, but does the girl come with it? That's the subtle message. You get a car like that, and all the girls think, wow, you know, or etc. So, Sutta Goswami is saying in a different time, he's not talking about Las Vegas and things like that. But in a sense he is, because he's saying, it's described in the Bhagavatam, he uses this word phantasmagoria. Isn't that a beautiful word? Phantasmagoria. And that's like Las Vegas, so that's the bar where my friend was crying, or that's the timeshare. It's all pretty colors and exciting. And meanwhile, nobody stopped to think, well, what's this all about? You know, like I was asking this timeshare place, well, what's behind the scenes? American cultural experience. Who's seen Wizard of Oz? Raise your hand if you've seen Wizard of Oz. Okay, a few of us. Okay. Remember the big scene. What's behind the curtain? Right? It looks like, wow, the big smoke and the fire and this and that, but then little Toto runs over and pulls the curtain back. Just an old guy pulling strings. So, I mean, Lord Jesus Christ said, don't lay up your treasures where moth and dust corrupt. You know, that's a powerful statement. You know? Some places describe that the whole material world is, some of it's very, very, you know, cutting. There's, mentioned last night, there's an analogy that's described that just like a deer sometimes wanders to the edge of a desert. And just like sometimes we drive down the road in the summer, you look off in the distance and you see water, isn't it? But then you drive closer, and then, but it's moved. The water's further away, and further away, and further away. But actually there's no water. So it describes a deer sometimes, less intelligent animal, comes to the edge of the desert, sees water, he's thirsty. So he wanders into the desert to find some water. There's no water, but he sees further in the desert and further into the, and he runs and runs and runs and runs. But there's no water there. So human beings are standing on the edge of the casino, looking like, wow, there's happiness and excitement in there, but they wander in, there's no happiness and excitement. And we see this in very, very destructive ways. Like the whole of America suffered from this opioid crisis. Well, where's that coming from? That's coming from a sense that I'm looking for some, well, a lot of times it starts from, you know, some disease and take pills to deal with the pain and all that. But it builds on this feeling of emptiness. There's a sense of some emptiness, maybe this will satisfy me. or you know, and then they twist the words. It's like happy hour. You know, it's like happy hour. Come and basically, you know, take a substance that's going to impair your thinking ability, impair your senses, but make you feel like you're more powerful and you're less affected by the world around you than you actually are. So Sutta Goswami is saying, wait a minute, we have that choice, we have our free will, you can do that, uniform life, we have complete free will. But better to stop, you know, go to the mall and watch what people are doing and think about it. You know, the Greek philosophers said, I think it was Socrates, one of the great Greek philosophers said, an unexamined life is not worth living. An unexamined life is not worth living. So in the Bhakti tradition, we understand that to the extent I'm thinking I'm the body and I'm thinking I can be happy by gratifying the body, gratifying the mind, it's like that deer wandering in the desert. It's just not possible. It's described as like oil and water, it doesn't mix. And there are some spiritual traditions that teach, like it describes here, austerity and different type of penances, that think, okay, the process to address these things, you have to completely detach yourself from the world, you have to undergo sometimes severe penances and things like that. A lot of Eastern traditions talk about things like that. But the Bhakti tradition that we're subscribing says, no, you don't have to do that. You simply have to understand who actually owns everything, where actually everything is coming from, and use the body and use the mind to reconnect with that supreme consciousness, with ultimately a person, described as the supreme, all-attractive person. So we don't deny the body, we deny the sense of thinking the body is meant for my selfish enjoyments. You know, if you look outside, nobody, well, maybe somebody did, I doubt anybody walked here tonight. You're all driving nice cars. So we don't condemn buying a car. What the Bhagavatam would say is, get a car within your means so you don't stress yourself out so much making the payments, you don't have time to think about anything else. And never think the car is going to make you happy. Because the car can't make you happy. The car can be a means of transportation to help you live in this life, you know, reasonably comfortably and save the time for spiritual awakening. You know? Make enough money to get by, but don't get so absorbed in making money you have no time for spiritual awakening. You know? We all have families. Keep the center focus of the family spiritual awakening. You know, if we love our kids, we love our spouses, we want to try to give them the best thing. Don't just give them the best thing for a few years. Give them the best thing in this life and for the future as well. And this way, you know, the Bhakti tradition is teaching that, as Prabhu would often say, nice analogy, we say that in one sense, from a spiritually critical perspective, all the things in this material world are a bunch of zeros. But if you put Krishna in the front, Krishna's like the number one. If you put one in front of so many zeros, then all of a sudden you have a huge value. So, I mean, I live in Washington, D.C., and I've just been kind of like amazed lately by so many of the politicians. You feel like it's right out of the Bhagavatam. I mean, you know, the most famous, the most wealthy, you know, the most number of wives, the most, you know, whatever, the most angry, the most bitter, the most paranoid. You know, it's like, wow, these people are like walking testimonies of the proof of the Shastra. So the Bhagavatam is just enjoining us, hey, you know, try something different. And Sutta Goswami is explaining here that if we do so, that we actually, and particularly mentions Lord Chaitanya, great avatar of Lord Krishna, Bengali saint, 16th century, East India and West Bengal, who came particularly to teach the chanting of the Maha Mantra as a means of awakening. So, I'll conclude in just a minute. Bhagavatam explains it's not just a question of theory, but there's actually processes by which one can learn to realize these things. It's not just, okay, I have faith in this, and you have faith in this, and she has faith in that, but by the process, by taking up a spiritual practice, we can actually cleanse our consciousness, and these things become a reality for us and not just a theory. Gradually, it becomes a reality. So much so that Prabhupada would describe that when our hearts become pure, we actually can see Krishna, talk to Krishna face to face. That's actually our goal. But we can only do so when that becomes our desire. Because Krishna is described as, in the Ishopanishad, the self-sufficient philosopher who's been satisfying everyone's desire since time immemorial. So ultimately it's upon us what's my desire. Man proposes, God disposes. Mm-hmm. You know, and if I want, in my generation again, oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz? My friends all have Porsches. I must make amends. If that's what you want, you know, some karma has to be there. We have to deserve it a little bit, you know. But Bhagavatam is saying, don't sell out to a culture that doesn't want people to stop and think about the deeper purposes in life. It doesn't mean that outside of this room there aren't many very spiritually and good people, and many people, you know, going to church and synagogue and temple and mosque who are also themselves endeavoring to understand and awaken their knowledge of the Supreme. We don't say this is some exclusive thing, but in general, the culture is pushing people into a very materialistic conception of life. And that's why there's so many issues with drug addiction, there's so many issues with, you know, psychological issues and depression and, you know, economic challenges and so much tension and division within the country. It's like, well, the basic premise is wrong. As long as people are thinking I'm this body and the more I get, the happier I'll be, it's not going to work. It just can't work. And as things get kind of crazier and crazier, in a humble way and hopefully in a sincere way, it's our role to kind of make that statement to society, the way Sutra Goswami is speaking here, to say, hey, did you ever stop and think about what's it all about? You know, did you ever stop and think, like, ask this girl that life's kind of tough, isn't it? And he was like, yeah. She told me through her tears, yeah, it's tough, it's really tough. So we try to take shelter of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's teaching us that by chanting the different names of God, particularly and especially inspires us to chant Mahamantra, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare.
These teachings become not just a beautiful picture or a nice story or an aspiring ideal, but actually a tangible reality. And that's what our goal is. We want to taste that tangible reality. So, any comments or questions? How are we doing on time? Oh, Master.
Right on time.
Okay, good.
We can have some few questions if anybody has any questions.
Anybody have or comments? Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment because I remember you said something about Denver, Colorado, and I lived in the Denver Temple.
Oh, you did? What from when to when?
I think I got there in 1994.
Oh, I just missed you.
I joined in Berkeley, California.
Okay.
Yeah, Jim Mostany Das became the...
Yeah, right after I left. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he went on to Vrindavan or Mayapur or something.
Yeah, he's in Mayapur now. That's great.
So,
nice temple.
Yeah.
It's a nice temple.
Yeah, it is. And I was just watching the Following Prabhupada series of DVDs. And I saw I think it was like in 1975 he was there.
Prabhupada came there in 1975, I think August.
Yeah, I was watching that.
Maybe July.
Just the other day I was just watching that.
Walking in the Denver City Park and all that?
Yeah, right.
City Center Park, I think it's called.
I think that's the one on Colorado Boulevard.
Yep, right on Colorado Boulevard.
Yeah.
The temple is on Colorado Colfax. Near there, 14th and Cherry.
Mother Nidra is
Oh, Nidra's still there.
Yeah.
She's the resident saint of the Midwest United States. Yeah, nice. What's your name?
Arjuna Das.
Arjuna Das, nice to meet you. Any other questions or comments? It makes dinner come quicker if you ask. Yes, Prabhu. You asked a question last time. See, he's a smart guy. He wants dinner to come quicker.
I wouldn't say it's a question or something like that, but in this material world that we live in right now, aren't we conditioning ourselves like, absence of mystery
absence of mystery or misery?
Misery, sorry.
Misery.
Absence of misery is our state of happiness.
Yeah.
So that's how I think we are like conditioning ourselves. That's how it's being.
Yeah, the Shastra describes that actually, I think it might have been in the purport, when the purport was read the other day, that when we can alleviate some distress, we think that's happiness. Right? So just like, I know, I got up today and the sun was out, it was like, yes, you know, finally, after 3 days of bitter cold and cloudy, dreary weather, I'm thinking, you know, the sun's out, now I'm happy, you know. Until I walked outside, I was like, oh, it's still 20 degrees outside. So yeah, and again, it's kind of, I mean, some people will say, well, geez, I mean, sometimes people say, well, that sounds like so pessimistic, you know, how can you say that all you're doing is relieving some misery, because actually, you know, I think life's pretty good and everything's okay, and it's like, the Shastras say, well, yeah, there are relative degrees of happiness, but it's all temporary, and the soul, we don't want temporary things. We're looking for something that's going to last. The first few times you kind of like look around and go, can I allow myself to think like that? Because again, most people, it's like you say, hey, here's a little, whoa, don't slow me down. I know where I'm going. I know what I got to get. Distract me. And then we just kind of say, well, are you sure when you get where you want to go, you're going to find yourself where you think you ought to be, or like, don't bother me. So, and that's why it says that generally our sense that we just take away some of the difficulty, that's happiness. But there's far, far greater experiences of happiness. Far greater. That's what the sages are all describing. Yes?
Prabhuji, why is it so difficult to understand kids, and why is it so difficult for the kids to understand parents?
We're not kids and we're not parents. I mean, you know, there's different levels you can answer that question. I'm not a family psychologist or anything at all. I'll tell you what the biggest conflict is, though, is when the kids are thinking we're the enjoyers, when the parents are thinking they're the enjoyers. When the husband's thinking she belongs to me, and the wife's thinking he belongs to me, that's a problem. And when the boss is thinking they belong to me, and the employee is thinking they belong to me, the president is thinking they belong to me, the general's thinking they belong to me, you know, that's where the problem comes. If we're actually understanding that every living being is sacred, every living being is an eternal part, is described part and parcel of Krishna. Every living being has a relationship with Krishna. Every living being is divine and sacred and should be honored by me. And then as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught, I'm the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant. So if the parents are understanding, actually, just like Prabhupada's father, our founder Acharya, he, as a little boy, he would, when he was growing up, described sometimes, he was a pretty smart kid, sometimes he was a little naughty, and his father would tell him, please forgive me, I'm your father, it's my duty sometimes I have to chastise you. So that was his father's mood. Not like, you little brat, how dare you, this and this and this, don't disturb me, can't you tell I'm, trying to watch the game, but please forgive me, you're acting out of turn, and it's my responsibility. And then he would tell him, even Mahaprabhu's father, we celebrate, or even Mahaprabhu's father would sometimes chastise him. So it's my duty to do this out of love for you, out of service for you. So I have to do that. Now children, they're not so, it's not so mature. If they've been raised in a spiritually focused environment, it's a little better, but they're the same way we're not mature in our spiritual awakening, so kids aren't so mature in theirs. So, but if the children are raised in a loving environment, then they're going to be, much more happy themselves and much more, willing to go along with the parents' guidance and things like that. But the bottom line, underlying thing is, as long as we're thinking that other people are for my exploitation, there's going to be conflict. A lot of conflict. Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. So I have one question. How should we know that whatever we're experiencing, happiness, success, is it right experience for us? And if it is not right, how to identify that and what is the corrective action to go in the right direction of having a real happiness or experience of happiness?
Well, I think a simple way of looking at it is whatever we have, you connect it in a spiritual practice. You know? So if you sing, so connect that spiritually. You know, we have some young ladies here in the audience that had a desire or have a desire to dance. So you learn to dance, or young men, you learn to dance in a spiritually focused way. You have some money. You know, some of you have successful business. Some people by our karma and Krishna's arrangement, maybe we're just making the money get by. Okay, there's not so much we can do, it's not so much excess. But others of us, maybe we have some excess money. So, I mean, all of us can contribute something, at least something. But if we, you know, make a lot of money and use it for, you know, build temples and do educational things and, you know, do prashadam distribution and like that. So the question is, whatever we do have, to connect it with Krishna. And if we do that, when you have money, you're happy because you're using it for Krishna. If you have money and you're not spiritually connected, your money is a source of distress. Because you're looking at everybody else who's got a little bit more and you're envious. And you're looking, is he trying to take my money? Is he trying to take my money? Is she trying to take my money? You know, like George Harrison, you know, the Beatle who passed away a few years ago, and he commented how when he became famous, he realized that all the people that everybody wanted to meet were not worth meeting. They're just like everybody else. And you know, when you're very, like sometimes you read these stories of the people who win the lotteries, it's like you want to ruin your life, win a lottery. Because the day you win the lottery, you suddenly realize you have a lot more relatives than you ever knew you had.
Absolutely.
You read stuff like it's true. You know, all of a sudden, you know, whatever, you win $5 million, and you got, you know, 50 more relatives and all want a piece of it. And they all expect you to, you know, throw big parties and provide for them and this and that. And so many friends that just, you know, they're so happy they read about you in the newspaper because they've been thinking about you for 20 years since you got out of high school. And it's so good that you won this thing so they finally could find you again because they've been looking for you out of just a genuine desire to be your friend. And then they're your very best friend until the day when the money's gone. And then it's all gone. But true stories, I mean, read a lot of people that you get divorced and because the money ruins their life. So if you have a lot of money, and you use it in a spiritually conscious way, you know, pious way for help other people and serve God, the money's a source of pleasure. And if you're poor, but you see that poverty as, all right, you know, God ultimately knows what's best for me and he's providing enough to get by. If you're beautiful and you're thinking Krishna gave me this beauty and, you know, let me use this beauty, whatever talents I have for in a spiritual connected way, it's a source of spiritual benefit. But if you're thinking, you know, I'm beautiful or I'm so handsome and you use it as a means of power, you know, everybody in this world wants to use their strength or their beauty as a means of power to control other people. It's just going to make you miserable, isn't it?
The reason I ask this question is everybody thinks that we're happy. Why to get some different kind of happiness? Whatever I'm doing happy, you know. Even,
we're really happy.
Even who is addicted to drugs feels they're happy with that state or in that.
Yeah, and the Bhagavad Gita describes, according to the modes of nature that we're influenced by, there's different kinds of happiness. And people are conditioned by that. So that even a person oftentimes in a very, very unfortunate, miserable way of life is actually thinking they're happy. And a lot of times because we talk ourselves into it. Because we don't think there's anything else. You know, you go to the office, you say, you know, how are you doing today? I'm fine. Are you sure? What do you mean, am I sure? Of course I'm sure. You know, are you really, really happy? Again, it's like, well, why are you asking those questions? Why are you threatening me with those kind of questions? You're making me very uncomfortable with those questions. But, you know, you can think to yourself, okay, if you're so happy, I mean, little things. You've all had these experiences, Krishna. These constantly remind us. I remember, like in 7th grade, watching. That's at least, I don't know how things are these days. Maybe it starts in 1st grade, but boys and girls first holding hands, and they were like the hip people. You had a girlfriend, you're like a little more hip, and noticing like they hold hands until like a cuter guy or a cuter girl walks up, and then they let go because they don't want to think like I'm with them, but maybe not permanently, and maybe you're better. I'll tell a true story. Peter Burwash, who's a devotee professional tennis player, was one of the top athletes in Canada for many years. Went on to become a public speaker at the Fortune 500 companies on personal motivation. Owns a chain of tennis clubs around the world, and a true blood Republican person. It's his political persuasion. Friend of his, we're not super close, but I talked to him once in a while. I talked to him about a year ago, and we're talking about different things. And he told me, he said, I spent an afternoon with President Trump. I said, I didn't know that. What kind of person is he like? Behind the headlines. And he said something. In fact, he said he's the most socially dysfunctional person you ever met. And I told him, I said, you're a Republican, and I know you didn't like Mrs. Clinton or Miss Clinton, so why do you feel like that? And he said, I was at the U.S. Open in a private box, I think before the election, and I don't know, I've never been to the U.S. Open in a private box, but I'm assuming there's maybe 20, 30 people, maybe something like that. And he said, and Trump was there, and he said the entire match, he had binoculars. And he was scanning the auditorium, and then he'd send his personal secretary, section 32, row 15, the blonde lady on the end. He'd send his assistant over, they'd bring her back, sit down, talk to her for 15, 20 minutes. She'd go back, he'd get out his binoculars. There's a redhead, section 106, send this guy, bring her back, sit down and talk to her. Finding beautiful, there's a tennis match, He said the whole afternoon, okay, with his wife sitting next to him.
Wow. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Now, at one point, it's like, hey, socially, we would consider that's kind of a unacceptable way to act. But from a philosophical perspective, what does it mean to us philosophically? Here's a person who's very powerful, very famous, very wealthy. He's got a beautiful wife. He had 2 other beautiful wives, but anyway, he's got this one. Why is he doing that? Why is he looking around? Why? Because he's allowed himself to become victimized by lust. It describes in the Bhagavad Gita that lust burns like fire and it's never satisfied. So in the human form of life, we can indulge ourselves in that lust, but it's never satisfied. And never satisfied. Why? Because we're the soul. We're on the inside. The soul wants spiritual pleasure, but we're trying to enjoy material things. It's described sometimes like you take gauze bandages, you wrap it around your tongue, and then you try to eat something sweet. You can't taste it. It's like it's not there. So you get, the beautiful woman from 16D comes down, and she's gorgeous, and, most men in the world would give anything just to talk to her. He talks to her half an hour, and it's not enough. Go get another one, and then another one, and then another one. Life after life after life after life, until somehow we come across Sutta Goswami, or some other great saintly person tells us, whoa, you're following the wrong path. You're chasing mirages in the desert. And that's when we all go, really? Is there really some alternative? I'm getting tired of chasing mirages in the desert. I think I'm chasing mirages in the desert. I asked the girl in the bar, are you chasing mirages in the desert? And your tears say, I'm tired of chasing mirages in the desert. And you realize it's not just me. I'm not the only one who's thinking that the balloons and the bells and the whistles just don't cut it anymore. It's not real. And then we say, okay, let's give it a try. And the thing that's amazing, and we're theists, we believe there's a person on the other side who's helping us, It's described by our charts. For every one step we take towards Krishna, he takes 10 steps towards us.
Yes.
And we start realizing that. We take little steps. So we do things, we come in contact with devotees and we hear things like, minimize the violence you perform in the world. So we say, okay, I'll become a vegetarian. That's a recommended process. Minimize the violence. So, okay, I can do that. It may not be easy, but I can do that. And then you realize, wow, I feel better. I think better. I'm feeling better about it. And all of a sudden I'm realizing that, geez, the dogs and the cows and everybody feels pain if we kick them, so I don't want to do that. Or, purify your mind, avoid forms of intoxication. And we do that, and you realize I'm thinking a little more clearly. And I'm starting to feel a little more sensitive towards other people. And, you start seeing, wow, this works. It's like you chant this mantra, and every once in a while you chant the mantra, and you feel like, wow, there's actually something here. There's something to this. There actually is an experience that's different than anything else I've done before. And that gives you to describe, Param Drisvani Vartate gives us a higher taste. And that's why you're all here on a Saturday night. You're not out at the bars or the bowling alley or the mini golf course or in the mall trying to get the last Saturday night special. Because you realize there's something better. Yes?
So earlier you were talking about how we're the soul, we're not the body, we're the soul.
Yeah.
So if we're the soul, then why did we come here in a body?
Yeah. That's a very good question. If we're the soul, why do we come into this world? In our tradition, our teachers answer that question in this way. They explain that the ultimate reality is the love between the individual soul and God or Krishna. And that everything we see in this world is a reflection of that. So we have loving relationships with our parents here. Although, because the body, they're temporary and there's, the difficulties are there. It's described as a reflection of the relationships that are there in the spiritual realm. So there's relationships, there's love between, in friendly relationships with parental relationships, etc. So, because that's the ultimate reality, the Vaishnava teachers explain, is love between the soul and God. That love means there has to be free will involved, or else it's not love. If your friends say to you, please come to our house because we want to have a nice party and have you have a nice time, and give you that choice, that's love. If they throw a chain around your neck and drag you to their house, that's force. So Krishna gives us that choice, that we can serve him. Divine couples, that's another thing, masculine and feminine aspects, but we can be with Krishna, serve Krishna, love Krishna, or we have the choice to come here. And if we as an individual soul misuse that free will, then we get the opportunity to come in this world and to fulfill our desire to live separate from God, and to try to be happy separately from God. And to basically, like Ravinda Prabhu describes, it's like having our own little God project. God owns everything, so I can come here and own a little something. He's the control of everything. I can come and try to control a little something. He's got unlimited friends. I can come here and try to be the center of a few friends like that. So we're kind of like trying to act that out. But so we get the body because of our own desire. And when we give up that desire to have a material body, then we remanifest our original transcendental or spiritual form. But it's based on our choice. And we kind of made the wrong choice. Now we have a chance to undo those choices. And what's interesting is we all experience, every time I make the right choice, other options open. And if I make the wrong choice, then those options start closing in on me. Make sense?
And I'm not sure if we are accepting this body, we are forced to accept this body.
Yeah.
Because we made wrong decisions. That's because, is that because we are spiritual energies, and to interact with the material world, we have a material body. That's why we're forced into this material body.
Yes.
That's why we are here.
Yeah.
Not as the spiritual self here. We cannot.
Yeah, because again, according to our Vaishnava teachings, spiritual means fully conscious of God.
Mm-hmm.
Material means forgetful of God. So if we want to be fully conscious of God and our relationship with God, then if that's really our desire, then that's what we experience. But if we want to kind of forget that there's somebody else who's really the enjoyer and think that I'm the enjoyer, then that curtain of illusion covers us. And then we get a material body so we can interact with material elements and try to enjoy. And there's some limited pleasure there. You know, when you're sitting on a nice pillow on the floor, it's nice. And when when you feel the sun in your face, it's nice. And when you hear feel the soft breezes in your hair, it's nice. And the soft breezes turn to wintry, blustery storms, etc. So, yeah. Kristen, do you have any questions from the sociological, anthropological, cultural, educational perspective?
No. If I have any, I'll definitely ask.
Okay, good. Good.
Yeah, we can continue with the question and answer during prasadam time,
Okay,
during
good.
dinner time. If that's good.
Prasadam time is our code for time to eat. Although just the term, we use the term prasadam because it actually means mercy. In our tradition, we understand that ultimately, it's actually kind of miraculous, but out of the earth comes apples and corn and beans and fruits and ultimately milk and so many things. So that we understand that we have this meditation that whatever food we get, we should cook it, and we should do so in a mood of meditation and actually offering it to God as a gift, and then we accept that food as prashadam or as mercy. So it's considered a sacred process, just the process of eating. We try to sanctify that. Okay. Okay. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki
Jai.
more
Krishna
Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Swami, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Mishnupad Paramams of the Rajagacharya Astottara Sati Shri Sriman's Divine Grace, Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Gaura Vaishnava Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Premzi Goho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Purvakshah Shilatam Kala Kala Oh Nishinga Parato Nishinga Nasinga Parato Nasinga Yato Yato Yamitato Nishinga Yato Yato Yamitato Nishinga Maya Hiranyakashipu Januvina Eshavajita Narahani Rupa Jayo Jagadisha Hare Jayo Jagadisha Hare Jayo Jagadisha
Keep it with you. Keep it with you.
Wait, sorry. I don't even know what you're doing.
देखो रे भाई भुवने नाई मोहन दाता देखो रे भाई भुवने नाई मोहन दाता पशु पक्षी जुड़े और भाई रे Thank you.
चलो अभी अपन ब्लैक वाला जो होगा ना हरि बोल just 15 seconds just Hare Krishna Hare Krishna. Just wanted to thank everyone for joining tonight. Wonderful association, and Prabhuji is upstairs. I wanted to thank him. I knew his schedule was super tight since last 2-3 days, extremely tight, and I'm very sure I knew that. In spite of that, he could make his time, on our request to come here on this auspicious occasion. Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Just few seconds. And I would like to thank, on behalf of everyone, Vijay Prabhu and Anand Prabhu for arranging the flower petals and flowers for wonderful flower abhishek today, and all the Mataji for wonderful sumptuous prashadam. And special thanks to Anita Didi for coordinating all the prashadam. Thank you, Didi. Hari Bol! And I'm forgetting someone.